All right. All right, let's get into it. Today we are going over a question, another category of questions that have been asked in different ways and to different extents. It really kind of comes down to the question of what the world might call a low libido. The scriptures would more term it that desire no longer stirs. What do we do when there is lack of sexual desire? Usually within marriages, this is going to be something that I know this is a gross overgeneralization, but usually the wife deals with this more than the husband. Men tend to have a higher sexual drive. Women tend to have a less of a desire at times. Now, again, that's way overgeneralized. Could be the exact opposite in your marriage. Maybe you don't even have this problem. But one of the things that happens when there's kind of you could almost say, in terms of sexual desire, you're not equally yoked. That's not a sin issue in that sense, because the unequally yoked is talking about faith. But when you have one partner who is not as desirous for sexuality as the other, there's going to be a conflict that arises, or tension, or just awkwardness even that comes up in the marriage. But one of the things that we'll go over some different aspects of this, but we want to address that idea first. First, sex is not the end all of marriage. It's not what we're trying to get to. But we also need to understand that lack of sex in the marriage is not exactly kosher. It's not okay. Just because, hey, if we don't do it, we don't do it. That's okay. Scripture doesn't say that, but because sexuality is an important aspect of a married couple's intimacy, the oneness of marriage. That is, yes, supposed to be the soul, supposed to be the relationship, but it's also oneness of flesh that is part of the sexuality. So desire for sex is not really the goal in sex, but rather the oneness with each other, and that is partially achieved by the one flesh. So whether you have that desire or you lack that desire, one of the things that you want to remember is you are looking for oneness with your spouse, not necessarily what desires you have or what desires you don't have. We are supposed to be seeking a oneness. But to get into the idea of kind of different levels of sexual desire, from no sexual desire to, boy, I gotta have that all the time kind of desire. Romans 15:1-6 says, "We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak." Now, you can make an argument for which one is which, and it really doesn't matter necessarily. It's more of each person in the marriage, the husband, the wife, either one and both are to have this mindset that they're to bear with whatever you see as a failing in the other, of they want it too much or they don't want it enough. Bear with each other, not to please ourselves, not to please yourself. Each of you should please your neighbor, or it says please our neighbors, for their good. But in terms of the marriage, please your spouse for his or her good, to build them up. That is part of this whole sexuality. The intimacy is you are building this relationship, not only to just have a relationship with each other, but to have that platform to build each other up, to help each other to grow in the Lord, to help each other to become more like Jesus. And again, that intimacy is partially in the flesh, in the oneness of sexuality. He goes on to say, "For even Christ did not please himself, but as it is written, the insults of those who insult you have fallen on me." So you look and go, "Well, see, it's not about me having pleasure," and that's true. If your goal in sexuality is just to receive pleasure, so if you don't get pleasure, you don't really have desire for it. That's the misnomer in some ways. Don't get me wrong. If you have pleasure, and that's part of the design of sexuality, that's great, but that's not the goal. Oneness is. And so even if you don't have a strong sexual desire, as a married person, you should have a goal of oneness. You should be pursuing that. And so we need to understand that we're not trying to please ourselves necessarily, but to become close to each other, so to build each other up. He goes on again, for everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope. There's a anticipation of good that comes out of when we follow the scriptures, when we actually do what the scriptures teach, following Christ, doing what he commands. We love each other. You can anticipate good, a sure anticipation of good. That is really what hope is, biblical hope. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind toward each other. Both the husband and the wife should have this same attitude towards each other, that I'm bearing with whatever I consider a weakness in you. So I'm not trying to please myself, but rather trying to please you, trying to bless you, trying to build you up. He says, may you have the same attitude of mind towards each other that Christ had. So this is still following Christ, so that with one mind and one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. So this oneness, and again, this is just general relationships in the church, but even more so in the marriage, this oneness of mind, oneness of heart towards each other, that you actually have a unity that you're praising God with, and that's that one mind, one voice. It's amazing. Again, it's not sexuality, but these principles are applied into our marital sexuality. Matthew 7:12 says, in everything then, do to others as you would have them do to you. Again, if you're getting caught up on your own sexual desires, whether you have a very strong sexual desire or whether you don't have sexual desire, or somewhere in between, and there's this disjointedness of how often and things like that, you still are to do to others as you would have them do to you. That is, your spouse, you're trying to please them. You're trying to do what blesses them, whether that means you have to go more frequently with them than you would want, or on the flip side, you're learning to be satisfied with less because your partner doesn't want that as much. This doesn't mean you can fight each other and there's a conflict over who's going to be the biggest servant. But when both are looking to please each other, bless each other, those conflicts become more one of trying to understand each other and still not overcome each other. Like, no, I'm the bigger martyr here. But rather, it really, when you have that attitude, it releases any conflict, because the goal is not whether we have a lot of sex or a little sex. It's about the oneness. It's coming together and having unity in this. So if you both have the mindset of doing to the other as you would want them to do for you, that is, you would consider them more important than yourself. For this is the essence of the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And many enter through it, but small is the gate and narrow the way that leads to life, and only a few find it. This is the narrow way of actually putting others' needs ahead of your own, even others' preferences ahead of your own. And if both the husband and wife are thinking this way and aiming this way, well, then you're actually going to find that as you communicate, as you talk to each other, as you express your desires, there's no wrong in expressing what you want or what you don't want in that sense. But it's a truth and love kind of conversation. But this leads to life, as it's not expressing myself so I get what I want, but it's expressing myself so that we know each other, so that we can come to understand each other and respond to each other right, that we have that loving attitude toward each other, that we have that one mind, one voice to glorify God together. So that's what sometimes happens when we have that unequally yoked desire in one sense. But there's different reasons for the low libido, and that's what we're kind of trying to get to today. Sometimes when people find themselves losing their sexual desire, this can happen for various reasons, and sometimes for multiple reasons. Some of them medical, you have some kind of medical thing happen to you. There's something biologically different within your system. Maybe your hormones are out of whack, or you've been injured or something like that. There's stress. even as you get older, we talk about that. It's a lot of times as you get older, a lot of things can happen that lessens your desire, and that could be medical things, that could just be being worn out, things like that. Stress can sometimes increase that for some others, but for others, stress lowers the desire for sexual intimacy. And then one of the big ones, often that it's obvious and yet it can be very ignored because it becomes a way of life, is marital conflict. So you want to try to at least examine yourself and go, why am I not wanting to be sexually active with my spouse? That's a good question to ask, because if you are married, this is one of the aspects of marriage that's supposed to be going on. So you just got to understand these things. But Ecclesiastes 12:1 actually addresses the idea of this, not sexuality again, but it's a principle that can be applied into it. Ecclesiastes 12:1 says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, in the days of your strength, in the days of potential and fun and all the things that you have in store for you. You learn to honor the Lord. You learn to walk with the Lord before things change in your life. So he says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. This Ecclesiastes 12 is talking about getting older. And a lot of times you start losing a lot of the senses are dulled. But even if the senses aren't dulled, oftentimes you've had the same types of meals forever. It's not as exciting. It's not as fun. It's not as amazing as it once was when you were young and you were still discovering things. Well, that still applies even to sexuality. Is there's things that can become boring or old hat because you've done it a million times. If you've had a good marriage, you should have. The danger is sometimes even that repetitiveness, can become old hat. And that's an attitude issue, but this happens as life goes on if we're not careful about it. But even biologically, there's just things that just aren't as fun. You know, when you're young, you play games, you run around, you do exercises, and you kind of enjoy it. As you get older, some of those things just aren't as fun anymore. They just don't do anything. Later on, Ecclesiastes 12:5 says, he's describing these things of dangers in the street, that is, you could fall. The almond tree blossoms, that is, the white hair. The almond tree has white blooms. The grasshopper drags itself along. Your legs start giving out. And desire no longer is stirred. It's just, you just don't want things anymore. This is the kind of concept that happens. Well, remember what he says. Remember your Creator before this happens. Well, we'll get into what do you do when you've lost the desires in this sense. We're going to switch over to what if you are not in that situation where you once had sexual desire, but now it's gone. But rather, let's just address like either never having it or just for whatever reason you don't have it now. It'll apply either way, to never having it, to having lost it, to never learning it, things like that. A lot of times people can feel sexually disconnected with their spouse. Again, this is generally speaking a little more in the struggles of the wife, but men often feel disconnected from their wives because wives make it pretty clear they're not very interested in the sexuality. And even as they are having this intimate moment, it's not very intimate. And if there's attitude issues, there's conflict in the marriage. There's an aspect where it's very clear that this is just kind of routine and it's mechanical. It's not relational. There's no seeking of oneness and intimacy. There's just let's get this done and move on with our life. A husband can feel very disconnected at that point, or the wife if you flip the role of that. But even without that, whether there's conflict or not, oftentimes, especially it seems like within Christian women, I don't know about unchristian women, pagans and unbelievers, I don't know. But sometimes what happens with Christian women is there's almost this misnomer in the church, like a real good woman, a real godly woman isn't sexually interested. She does it out of duty. And there's almost a theological barrier for some wives as if I'm less of a lady for wanting my husband and actually enjoying this. So there's almost an inhibition. There's even things out there where older Christian women teach younger Christian women not to love their husbands, but to lie to their husbands, to fake an orgasm, to pretend, but not to be honest, not to be true. And this is where, boy, that we got to address those kind of things. But again, we're looking for the oneness, that we're united with each other. We become one flesh. Orgasm is not the goal. We tend to get into the idea that the man, again, men orgasm much easier than women, generally speaking. And so it's very easy for a man to feel like, well, geez, it should be kind of the same thing. But there tends to be a lack of that for women. Sometimes that's because of their own attitude. Sometimes it's because the man is selfish and unskilled. Other times it's just this theological barrier. Other times there's conflict. Other times, ladies, you get busy in your mind thinking, oh, we got to do this and this, and you're thinking more about laundry than you're thinking about your husband. Well, it's hard to have a good time when your mind is all around anywhere but what you're supposed to be doing during intimacy. But all that to say, part of the misnomer is that orgasm is the goal, or even simultaneous, like as if that's what real love is that you both simultaneously do that. And it's like, no, that is not the point. And so we have to be very careful when we're feeling disconnected or you're unable to orgasm. We have to examine our hearts. I mean, yeah, if you have medical issues, maybe you literally can't because of something medical in your life. But even then, be very careful that you don't just buy into that kind of stuff, because it seems like Christian women have passed that down as old wives' tales. I mean, sorry, that's just kind of what happens. A real lady doesn't really have that, and it's okay. That's just how it is. That can really mess with you. That can really mess with your ability to have an orgasm, and the ability to be intimate, and the ability to be one with your spouse if you are listening to falsehood in your life. I mean, in the King James, the New King James even talks about in Proverbs 23:7 that for as he thinks in his heart, so he is. So as a man thinks, or as a woman thinks in her heart, in his heart, so she is, so he is. How you think is going to really affect your feeling of connection, your fellowship, the oneness, the intimacy, and even going down to the physical response of enjoying it, and even coming to a full climax of sexuality. Sometimes that can be a lot of your thinking. And so you need to be aware and examine yourself to say, am I in the wrong mindset? Have I listened to lies? Have I listened more to what people say than what God actually describes in his word? For anyone who's feeling these things, I suggest literally read through Song of Solomon and think about it and study it with the aspect of what is God describing for the husband and wife, and what should our attitudes be? What should our thoughts be? You have the Song of Songs, Song of Solomon 8:4 says, "Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires." The ESV puts it, stir up or awaken. And then it says, "Under the apple tree, I roused you," in the NIV. In the ESV, it says, "I awakened you." Boy, I've been saying a lot of awkward words already, but I think Parson Blush might talk about this part real quick. Okay, what does it mean to arouse or awaken love? Well, obviously there's some relational aspects of this that it's talking about having a relationship that is growing, but there is a sexual aspect to this. That means some parts of the body, especially it seems in the female body, needs to be awakened, aroused, almost taught that it is a sexual organ. This can mean repeated practice of sexuality before a woman actually starts to have her body respond sexually in the sexual organs. It can feel almost deadened. Well, if you don't allow your mind to be awakened that way, aroused that way, the body often responds to how we think. All right, thank you, Parson Blush. Our thinking actually can cause a whole lot more than we actually think. We tend to think the body's just a body, but just think about this for a second, and I'm sorry to drive you nuts, but does your ear itch? Does your nose itch? Do you need to yawn? Right? As soon as I say those kind of things, it's amazing how many people, not everybody, but it's amazing how many people will start to kind of feel like an itch or, and then need to yawn just because you were prompted by a thought. That you can actually have a physical response, a physical stimulation just by a thought. In the same way, if a woman or a man thinks this is too much for me, I'm not supposed to enjoy this, I'm not supposed to like this, it's not ladylike or whatever, that thinking can inhibit your body from responding. Whereas if you go forward, well, there's things that happens in our thinking that can actually bless. So in Philippians 4:8, I'm sure you're familiar with this, and maybe you've never applied it sexually, but Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable. In Hebrews, it talks about that everyone should keep the marriage bed in honor. Like they should honor the marriage bed. So think about the marriage bed in an honorable way, not in a salacious, gross, it's icky, it's not ladylike, it's not dignified way. The marriage bed is naked and unashamed, only between a husband and wife, not with everyone else, but just between the two of you. But your marriage bed should be honorable, and you should think about that in an honorably way. That means thinking of some things that if you put it on television, if you put it in a movie, if you put it in public format at all, it's dishonorable. But between the husband and wife, it's honorable. Well, we tend to kind of hear that so much about purity, which is perfectly appropriate to go, we shouldn't be taking this stuff in, like watching movies and things like that. Pornography, those things are stealers. They're wickedness. They take away. But you can translate that into, I shouldn't even think about my spouse at all, and I shouldn't desire my spouse. That is not biblical thinking. We should actually honor the marriage bed because that's pure. And he says, think of what's pure. Think of what's lovely. The love between a husband and wife, physically, and relationally, is a lovely thing. And he says, think about such things. That's what we're supposed to be doing. In Psalm 45, verse 10, he says, listen, daughter, and pay careful attention. The ESV actually puts it, consider, think about this. And that's kind of what it's getting at, is the paying of careful attention. As you consider these things, think about, forget your people and your father's house. Let the king be enthralled by your beauty. We're talking about sexuality here. This is a marriage psalm, and he's going, let the king be enthralled by your beauty. Naked and unashamed is not just the niceness of your hair and your face, but the whole package. Well, that's for the husband and the wife. The wife should be enthralled with her husband's beauty or handsomeness or whatever you want to put it as, and the husband should be enthralled by his wife's nakedness. And so there's a thrill in that. Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 2 says, I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. And here the husband comes and says, open to me, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with dampness of night. I've taken, and the wife comes and says, I've taken off my robe, that is like, my robe, outer, my bathrobe kind of thing. Must I put it back on again? Do I have to get up and get warm and cozy? I've washed my feet. Must I soil them again? Get up and walk out of bed? Like, ugh. Look, even the songs kind of acknowledge the fact that men tend to have more desire than women. And again, I know that's a gross generalization, but it's generally what happens. But he's looking for love, and the wife tends to kind of shy away from it, maybe because he's, again, selfish, maybe because he's not thoughtful, he's not very romantic, he's not like the book characters who he has just the right words to say. Be careful, ladies, because if you're waiting for your husband to be as romantic as a book or some kind of Hallmark movie kind of thing, you're not only going to be disappointed, but that is in many ways a female version of porn, that you're looking for your husband to be something that's just not fair. Just like if a man is to look at porn and go, well, why is my wife's body just as perfect as a model? That's not even fair, because both of those are fantasies. All of those are well edited, well thought out. I mean, a writer writes a movie and a story. If they're a good writer, they think about it quite a bit, and they have many aspects, rewrites, and things. Life isn't like that. We don't get to rewrite it and say just the perfect words at just the perfect time. So oftentimes, the pornography for a man or the fantasies of a woman can put barriers between us. And that's where you have to be aware that if you're not wanting something, examine yourself and go, is this just something I just don't want? Or is it my mindset's wrong and my expectations are off? I've been deceived by a fantasy, by a lie, by an illusion. But what happens with the woman here when he's asking so much and he's wanting, she goes, my heart began to pound for him. So she finally arose and went to go find him, and she's finally turned on in one sense or another. And she says, I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. There are times when the husband's desire doesn't match with the wife's, and oftentimes they say men, their testosterone's high in the morning, and women's estrogen is high at night, and this is where men usually want to fall asleep at night, and women want to stay asleep in the morning. Women stay up late, men tend to get up earlier. Again, generalizations, but men are generally more sexually desirous towards the mornings, and they're falling asleep at night, especially the older you get. Whereas women can sometimes be more desirous at night, but not at all in the morning. Those things, it's like, why didn't God just make us have the same cycle and system of desire? Well, it's because he's looking for us to have unity, not to just have easy desires for each other, but rather to seek each other out, to lay our lives down for each other. This means you need to talk. Anyways, she pays a price for this, and at the end, she's telling the messengers around, she says, tell them I'm faint with love. Oftentimes, women are not interested in sexuality to the point where they drive their husband away, even just relationally, but maybe even worse, but they drive their husband away, and they're like, well, why don't we have a good relationship? And then you flip it and go, the husband only wants sex, and then he's wondering why the wife isn't interested in it. Well, he's not interested in talking and listening. Both men and women struggle with their own selfishness, and this is where we have to kill those foxes, as Song of Songs talks about. There's a lot of foxes in the field that need to be taken care of. But again, just because you're slow to respond, if you're a woman or even a man, you got to understand, if you think through it and you're not selfish, like, do I have to get up? Do I have to try? Do I have to exert myself? Oftentimes, the desire will come at a different time, but it may not be available the other side. This is where, again, we as husbands and wives need to love each other and lay our lives down for each other. This is Song of Songs. I'm reading out of the NLT at this point. It says, I went down to the grove. This is Song of Songs 6, 11, and 12. Went down to the grove of walnut trees and out of the valley to see the new spring growth, to see whether the grapevines had budded or the pomegranates were in bloom. Again, these are analogies of sexuality. Are you looking for that sexuality as a husband and wife? Are you actually seeking each other to see, do you want it? Do you talk about it? Are you in the mood? Do you search each other out? Or wives, are you always waiting to be approached and you're never thinking about approaching your husband? You know, men don't mind being pursued by their wife. And wives don't mind being pursued by their husband relationally. Many times men don't want to be pursued relationally in terms of, let's just talk some more. They would consider it pretty loving to be approached sexually. But that plays into both and. If the husband were to pursue his wife relationally, not just sexually, but relationally, wanting to hear about her day, talking to her, wanting to know her herself, that plays into the marriage bed. Whereas at the same time, wives, if you want your husband to be more relational, oftentimes you need to be looking for these things in sexuality, that the more you're sexual with him, the more he's more apt to be intimate in relationships too. And it's like, well, why can't we just lay down your life, bear with the failings of the weak? You are looking to build others up, your spouse up, not just get things the way you want it. But look at what happens. It says she went to see what would happen. Before I realized it, my strong desire had taken me to the chariot of a nobleman. Before I even realized it, desire welled up and led me to basically a sexual encounter because I was looking for my spouse. I was looking to see if this was an appropriate time, if there was some. Wives, do you think, husbands, do you think the right way about serving and loving each other, not just necessarily surviving the sexual relationship, but actually looking to bless each other in it? Song 7:13 says, the mandrake sent forth a fragrance, and at our door is every delicacy, new as well as old, and I have treasured up for you, my beloved. So understand, there is a learning curve in sexuality. There's going to be new things, new delicacies in the sexuality. There's going to be old things. There's going to be things that are great, but your routine, you know what that is. But this goes back to the idea of awakening, arousing. There's things that are new, whether that's a new area to touch or a new area to be with, physically, a new idea of what you do together, positions. Oh boy, there's a lot of ways to get creative. But sometimes it's still new, and new is unfamiliar, and oftentimes new is uncomfortable. And if you are, again, thinking this is wrong and bad, you're going to clench up and just kind of, it's not going to be desirous. And again, we're not talking sick, salacious things. We're just talking a husband and wife being naked and unashamed. But there is going to be that learning curve, husbands and wives. But it seems, again, wives struggle with this more, so I'm going to address that a little bit, that you need to be open to learning, to growing, to knowing that right now you may not have all the physical pleasures that you think should just come. Sometimes that needs to be aroused, it needs to be awakened, and that happens with different parts of the body, but also just with your own mind, to get used to certain things and to actually have a mindset towards it. So, all right, another part of this that happens. A lot of times, how do you express your level of interest or level of disinterest? I mean, how do you talk about those things? This is something that often happens in sexuality, is people don't talk about it. People don't address it because they're embarrassed. It feels awkward. No one wants to go through the awkward stage of hurting someone. We don't mind hurting each other when we're mad, but when you're in an okay relationship or a great relationship, you don't want to hurt that person unnecessarily. So a lot of times, again, even in Christian circles, I've heard of this where women will tell other women, well, you don't talk about that kind of stuff. If you don't want it, you just pretend like you want it. You just survive, basically. No, that is not biblical. That is not biblical advice. Even down to faking an orgasm. It's like, do you do that to encourage your spouse? Well, let's look at what Scripture says and apply it to every aspect of life. This is not necessarily about sex itself, but it applies. It's not like the door shuts and God's word goes away when it comes to sexuality. Proverbs 26, verse 28 says, a lying tongue hates those it hurts, and a flattering mouth works ruin. So if you're flattering your spouse when it's not the truth, how will they ever learn? How will a husband ever learn to really bless you in your body if you don't tell him what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what you like, what you don't like, how you feel, where you're interested in, the timing, what things are distracting you, what things you want. I mean, look, if there's timings in the day, or there's noises that distract, or there's even the smell, and your husband should take a shower, or, if you never talk about it and you just survive, it doesn't get better. In fact, when the truth finally comes out in a moment of frustration, or it just becomes apparent and you're called out on it, whatever, you hurt that person, and actually you've hated them now because you didn't give them a chance to actually improve and become something they could have been for you. You've got to tell the truth, not flatter. That works ruin. And lying, you really are hating your spouse. You're putting yourself above because you'd rather not be awkward. You'd rather not have that moment of feeling bad about yourself by telling the truth. Instead, you'd rather just let them live in a lie and think there's something when it's nothing. That does not bring intimacy, does not bring oneness. You got to tell the truth. Hey, look, I mean, 2 Timothy 4:3 says we want people to say, teachers to say what the itching ear wants to hear. We want to hear, as a husband, I want to hear, I'm a great lover. I do everything great. That's what I want to hear. But if my goal is oneness and my wife's goal is oneness, I don't want to hear that just to hear it. I want that to be the truth. And if it's not the truth, I need to know the truth so that I can become a great lover. So yeah, no one wants to hear they're not doing things right. They're not really proficient at what they're doing. But how will they become proficient if they're not told, if they're not explained to, not only afterwards or before, but even in the proceedings of intimacy? Communicate. You've got to communicate with each other. Ephesians 4:25 says, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to his neighbors. Look at this. Speak truthfully to his neighbor, for we are all members of one another. We're members of each other. Well, how much more a husband and wife should speak truthfully, not falsely to each other. We don't fake things. We don't lie. We do express our interest and disinterest, but we don't do it in shorthand, like, oh, I'm just not interested. It's like, and try to get over with the awkwardness as quick as possible. Explain what that means. You as a man, if you're sitting there and your wife suddenly wants you physically and you're going, I have no interest right now. You don't go, oh yeah, that's great. And, oh, hey, I just, I don't know what happened. Sometimes the man could just go, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. It has nothing to do with you. I'm tired. I haven't slept for a while. I've been working hard. And the wife, the same kind of thing. If you love each other and you express that truthfully and with compassion towards each other, not just, no, I don't want it. It's like, no, explain. Don't go shorthand in quick explanations. Talk about it. Describe what's going on. I'm really distracted. I've got dishes to do and I'm thinking about that. It's like, oh, geez, okay, go do the dishes. Well, this thing's happening tomorrow. If you allow all the distractions to take away, but you never talk about it, you and your spouse never have a chance to discuss and figure out how to help that, but also even confront each other going, you know what, that's kind of selfish that you're always thinking about these things instead of me when we're here. Is that not cool? Like, come on. So you need to speak truth to each other with love and compassion. Ephesians 4:15 says, speaking the truth in love, we will in all things grow up into Christ himself, who is the head. We grow up as we speak truth to each other, but in love, not in fighting, not in frustration, not in just, I need to express myself, but really, literally loving each other. All right, I'm Parson Blush. There's another thing that comes up in this that might be causing some of the disinterest in sexuality. Some men have a problem with premature emission. What do you do about that? What do you do? Again, this is more a man issue on this one, is what if you're really not very good at being a lover because you go too fast. You're done so fast that your ability to please your wife is diminished very quickly because of, as the world would say, premature. 1 Thessalonians 4:4 says that each of you should learn to control your own body. Husbands, you are not to give in to your sexual desires and pornography, lust, things like that. That's very true. But also in the marriage bed, you need to learn how to control your body so that you are the disciplined man, because men, generally speaking, can have a climax very fast, very easily, generally speaking, and the wife tends to take a lot of time. It's a little more intricate and a little complicated at times and takes time. If the man does not learn how to control his body, control his thinking, control his love for his wife, thinking of really, in one sense, trying to please her above just being done for himself. Men can often be stimulated so quickly that they're just done. Well, they don't learn how to stimulate their wife, to please their wife really physically. And so this premature, there's a question even on that. What is premature? Sometimes that's almost the idea of like, we're going to have a simultaneous climax. That is not the goal. The having an orgasm at the same time, sure, I'm sure that would be wonderful, but that's not the goal. The goal is to bless each other, to please each other. And this is where we have to understand, again, husbands, learn to control your own body. That will involve your thinking. You have to not just release yourself and just enjoy what your body's feeling and what you're wanting, but you have to concentrate literally on your wife and what she is feeling and what she is wanting. That means you're observing her more than you're thinking of yourself. That is not something you just learn overnight. That is something you practice. But learn to control your body so that you become a good lover to your wife. But 1 Corinthians 7:4, the New Living, again, talks about this pretty well. It says, the wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Other translations, just your body does not belong to you, your body belongs to your spouse, is the idea, and really captures the whole mindset of this. This is how it should be. But wives are there to please their husbands. Husbands are there to please their wives. And if you go into that, that does not mean I cannot enjoy myself. That is the goal. No, the goal is not to not enjoy yourself. The goal is to enjoy your spouse. But that heart comes in, am I enjoying my spouse by giving my spouse pleasure? That's more the goal. And as you give your spouse pleasure, and again, don't inhibit like, oh, they want to give me pleasure. No, I'm supposed to be the servant. I'm the martyr here. No, both should want to give pleasure to each other, which means you should enjoy it as these things are going on, or else that probably inhibits their pleasure. So it's both and, not either or. But the husband, his body's there for his wife's pleasure. The wife's body is there for the husband's pleasure. And that means it doesn't matter the climax, or even if there is a climax, that's not the point. The point is intimacy. The point is love for each other. The point is oneness. And yeah, to the aspect of desire. For men, it's usually going to come to a climax. For women, it's nice if that happens. It's great if that happens for her. But if she is in such a place, whether it's mentally she's not there, hormonally, or just there's other issues going on in her mind, it may come to a point where it's like she doesn't have that desire, or the body's not cooperating, all kinds of reasons. It's not like you go and tell her that happens. It has to happen. If she's satisfied, great. Let it be. The orgasm is not the goal. But whether you go before your wife or after, that's not really the point. It's a matter of where's the desires, and are you still there for her, even if you've prematurely gone. Well, there's other ways to get the job done, and so that's where you look and go, okay, we have to practice that kind of stuff. We have to practice my own body's self-control, but maybe I'll even get carpal tunnel helping my wife out. These are things that married people need to learn how to do, because you love each other and you lay your life down for each other. You're not looking to please yourself. You're looking to please the other. But as both are doing it, you're both going to be blessed. Again, in 1 Corinthians 7, it says, the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. Again, and he says, do not deprive each other. So you're trying to fill each other up. You are looking to actually not withhold anything, but give whatever is needed, again, within the confines of biblical love and biblical parameters. We're not talking about, oh, let's watch porn together. No, that's not biblical. But sexuality between a husband and wife, there's a wide breadth of freedom, and it's don't deprive each other. What do you need from each other? If the wife doesn't need a climax, okay, so be it. If the husband needs to, so be it. but don't deprive each other. You're supposed to fulfill each other's sexual needs. The way you're to satisfy each other. Proverbs 5:19 puts it this way: a lovely deer, graceful doe, let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. Fill you at all times. I mean, when you think about that the sexual relationship should come to a place where even if you yourself are not needing it or wanting it, that doesn't mean your partner's not hungry. And so you should fill them up. The concept being, just like we get hungry for food, if you eat a big meal, after a while, if you get full enough, the idea of eating more just doesn't appeal to you. You're full. That's what this is saying, is that you should be full of sexual intimacy to the place where a husband's eyes don't rove around for pornography. A wife doesn't rove around for intimacy of the relationship and physicality and all of those things, because the husband's fulfilling those things for her. He's making every effort to please her relationally and sexually, and the same for the wife to the husband. That you fill each other up at all times, that you're intoxicated always, that it's literally love drunk, Twitter-pated. That you are actually in that mindset of why would I want anything more than what my wife or my husband is giving me? That's the idea, that you don't deprive each other. Paul puts it very nicely as a single man. As a married man, I go with Proverbs 5 where it says, fill up at all times with delight, intoxicate. He's talking more like, this is the command, so I don't blame him for that. But the scripture describes it both ways, right? If you're a little more uptight, consider, don't deprive, fulfill the needs. If you've learned how to loosen up and you're awakened in your marriage, you're being filled up. You are intoxicated. This is wonderful, right? So the idea is that we are making every effort to build each other up, to have freedom and confidence with each other. And again, this is an aspect of scripture that applies into the marriage and into the marriage bed. Romans 14:19 says, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification, or I like the New American where it says building up of one another. That the peace is freedom and confidence. Unity, oneness. There's a freedom and confidence to talk about desires, to talk about disinterest, to talk about pain, to talk about comfort, to talk about where you're at, what you want, what you don't want. And this is not a one and done conversation. This is a ever-changing conversation, because your bodies are going to change. Your insecurities are going to change. Your desires are going to change. Your needs are going to change. There's going to be times you're up. There's times you're down. There's times you're stressed. There's times you're happy. There's times it's going to change, but you're constantly talking, not just of sexuality. I hope that's not what we're getting at, but that we're not afraid to go there either. That as a husband and wife, you are perpetually talking about what bills need to be paid, and where your heart is before the Lord, and how you learn this from the scriptures and those kind of things. But also that I want you, or I'm really tired right now, or man, I don't know what's been going on in my mind, but the whole idea of us being intimate just isn't working. Or why are we at odds? What's going on? You talk about these things to the place where, as you grow in that oneness, there's freedom and confidence. You make every effort to build each other up, to have that freedom and confidence. You think about that. If you had that freedom and confidence to every aspect of your marriage, including the marriage bed, this is the naked and unashamed idea. Not just sexuality, but relationally. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. Even though the place where you're struggling with sin or struggling with temptation to sin. If I'm filled with my wife, I don't even have a temptation towards anything, right? Well, but if I'm not full because life happens and, you're going forward and things happen, I still need to tell my wife, honey, the way I even put it with my wife when that happens is my antenna are up. I'm starting to notice women. And it's like, I'm not even lusting. But the fact that I'm noticing that there's someone else. I love the song, I Only Have Eyes for You. When my eyes aren't just for Sarah, I know it's time. I need to be filled. And that's where we have to be honest with each other. We need to talk to each other about these things. And the same for the wife, that if she's reading a book or watching a TV show and goes, man, I wish my husband would talk to me that way. Don't hide that from your husband. Talk to him. Describe what you're looking for so he can learn and grow so that he can fulfill your needs sexually and relationally. And the same for the husband. Husbands, you got to humble yourself at times and tell your wife, I want to be pursued. I want to be loved. I want to be touched and loved in not just the marriage bed, but outside the marriage bed. You need to explain why you're touching your wife. I mean, if you go to your wife always and you hug her and she's thinking, oh, he wants to get in bed, and you're going, why does she think that? Well, maybe you've never told her differently. Like, that's not what I'm thinking right now. Build each other up so you have freedom and confidence to go, no, I just love you. I'm just showing you physical love by hugging you and kissing you. I have no designs for anything beyond that right now. I just care about you. If she doesn't ever hear that from you, how is she supposed to interpret anything from you physically if it always ends up in bed and there's never been a discussion of you're not trying to arouse her, you're just loving her? Talk in the bed, out of the bed, before the bed, after the bed, without aspects of the bed. I mean, just there needs to be a growing confidence and freedom, but part of that is in the bed. And if you avoid that as a husband and wife, your whole marriage is going to be affected because the intimacy of the one flesh actually does flow in and through and back around to the sexual relationship, because this is the only one that's legitimate in the one flesh kind of relationship. So what if you're lacking desire? I hope some of this was helpful, but let's just say you still don't have desire. Well, I hope you saw the thread of how you're supposed to approach that. You're still supposed to love your spouse more than yourself. And yes, be honest about it, but explain where it's at. Maybe it's a medical issue, or maybe you're just exhausted. Maybe you got some mental issues going on in your heart that are struggling with various stress aspects. Maybe you're insecure, but you talk and you're free and you're open with each other. But then you don't stop there and go, well, I don't want it, so we just don't do it. It's like, no, I want to please you, not please myself, so that we can, as one, with one mind, with one voice, give glory to God as we become one body together. Hopefully, maybe your desire will grow back, or it'll grow in the first place. But even if it doesn't, your desire for your spouse will grow. Whether it's a sexual desire or not, the more you love each other and actually look for intimacy in the bed and out of the bed, in physical relations and outside of physical relationships, you're looking for that oneness. And that's the goal of this, is true intimacy. And you cannot neglect the flesh. You cannot neglect the sexual aspect of marriage and go, well, we'll just grow beyond that. Sometimes you just need a cuddle to grow closer to each other and closer to Christ. So lay your life down for each other and see what God will do. But think biblically, think lovingly, think on what is true, what is honorable, what is lovely. And you will see that God will fulfill your desires, but enable you to fulfill your spouse's desire as you lay your life down for Christ and for your spouse. I hope that helps. Peace.